Patrick Bet David just made his case for who the real it girl of the WNBA is, and it's not who the legacy WNBA media keeps pushing. He's backing Sophie Cunningham of the Indiana Fever on her stance protecting women's sports and for her play on the court next to Caitlyn Clark. Angel Reese gets brought up too, but only as the example of what happens when your mouth outruns your game. During the recent WNBA All-Star game, Reese missed shots, received a flat-footed block from A'ja Wilson, and got ignored by Obama entirely. Cunningham's rising, Reese is crashing, and Bet David is making sure Reese becomes the punchline. Are you Team Sophie or Team Reese? Let me know down in the comments below. Here's the quote that started all of this. Sophie Cunningham said, "I just don't think we need to have men competing in women's sports." That's it. That's the sentence that got clipped, quoted, and blasted across every timeline. But most people stopped reading right there, and they never saw what came after, because when she got pressed on whether that made her hateful toward transgender people, she said something a lot more careful. "I extend love and I don't dislike anyone. I think there is room for absolutely everyone here, and I think there's room to love everyone." That's not a dodge. That's someone answering a hard question straight, without hiding behind a PR statement. Cunningham didn't just throw out an opinion and walk away either. She backed it up with an actual argument, tying it to Title IX and the entire history of how women's sports got built in the first place. Her words were direct. That's why you have Title IX. That's why you have some of the greats in women's sports. If Title IX and women's sports weren't protected, then you wouldn't hear about any type of women in sport. She's talking about protecting a structure that already exists, not tearing anybody down. And she made her personal stance clear too, saying, "I'm not a very political person, but I do have beliefs, I have morals, and I'll always stand on those and be true to who I am." In 2026, saying that out loud, on the record, with cameras rolling, isn't the safe move. It's the kind of statement that gets a player buried under bad press for weeks. That's exactly why Bet David jumped in. He's a business guy, he's got millions of followers, and he didn't have to touch this at all. But he watched Cunningham's interview and noticed something before he even got to the words. He noticed her body language. He pointed out she had her arms crossed, and he said that's because she already knew the backlash was coming. He called her truly brave, stunning, and courageous. And he said flat out, this is bigger than basketball, that she's going to have a life after the WNBA because of how she carried herself here. Bet David broke down the actual physical argument too, saying, "I look at their shoulder development. I look at their wingspan. I look at their size. Look at the size of their feet. How on earth could my daughter be competing with them?" The answer is she couldn't. It's not sexual. It's mechanical. That's him treating this like a fairness problem, not a culture war. The backlash came fast, and it came from inside the league. Bet David didn't let that slide either, calling out how conveniently the conversation got redirected away from biology and onto something else entirely. Meanwhile, other players around the WNBA, the ones who love a microphone for literally anything else, went dead silent on this one. Nobody wanted smoke. Cunningham took it anyway, and Bet David said she's probably going to be out of a job after this season because of it, and he respected her for saying it regardless. That's the difference right there. Cunningham isn't building a brand off a hashtag or a dance she filmed in a hallway. She's putting her actual name, her actual career, behind something she believes protects the sport itself. And now she's not doing that alone on some side podcast, she's doing it while lining up next to Caitlyn Clark every single night, backing up every word with what she does on the floor. How does a player who called herself the Michael Jordan of the WNBA end up as the punchline of her own showcase event? All-Star Weekend is supposed to be the one time a year the league puts its biggest names under the brightest lights. Every star gets the stage to remind everyone why they belong in the conversation. For Angel Reese, that stage turned into a 9-minute stretch where she didn't score a single point in a game where scoring is basically handed to you. It started with a missed layup, wide open, no defender within 3 feet of her. That clip hit basketball accounts by Saturday night and spread fast, because layups like that go in 99 times out of 100. Then came the block that turned into a meme machine on its own. A'ja Wilson stopped Reese's shot without leaving the ground. arms up, flat-footed, barely trying. Wilson admitted afterward she wasn't even going for the block. She said she was just trying to get out of the way and ended up sending the shot back anyway. That's the part that made it spread everywhere. A defender not even playing defense still shutting the door on her. The sequence ended with Reese tripping over Wilson's foot and hitting the floor, live, in front of everybody. Then Obama showed up to greet the All-Stars, and the cameras caught something nobody could spin. He walked straight past Reese and went right to Caitlyn Clark, talking with her one-on-one, while Reese stood a few feet away in full view of every lens in the building. He told Clark not to let the noise get to her, brought up his own story about not getting famous until he was 45, and gave her real advice about carrying that kind of attention in her 20s. His back stayed turned to Reese the entire time. Clark called the moment one she'll remember forever, and fans immediately read it as proof of who the league, and honestly the country, actually sees as the face of women's basketball right now. Then there's the sneakers. Clark's CC ones had players crowding her locker asking for pairs before they even hit shelves. Courtney Williams grabbed hers and wore them that night. Natisha Heidemann got a pair too and posted about it right away. Even Jonquel Jones, who walked away with All-Star M5P after dropping 22 points, 13 rebounds, and 8 assists, wanted Clark's shoe over her own sponsored gear. Reese offered up her Reebok line to the group, and nobody said a word. No requests, no posts, nothing. That silence carried more weight than any comment section ever could. None of these moments look huge by themselves. A missed layup happens, a block happens, a handshake goes to somebody else, a shoe offer gets ignored. But stack them all in one weekend, and it stops looking like bad luck. It starts looking like a pattern, one that lines up exactly with the gap between what Reese says about herself and what actually shows up on the floor when the cameras are rolling. The box score read 0 points in 9 minutes at an exhibition game, and that screenshot got passed around for days next to memes about the Michael Jordan comparison she made herself. Bet David watched every second of it play out, and he wasn't about to let it slide without saying something. Bet David didn't hesitate. "Yeah, she needs to take a hike," he said, and then he took the whole idea apart piece by piece. His argument isn't personal. He's not saying Reese is a bad person or a bad player. He's pointing at the gap between what she's selling and what she's actually producing on the floor, and that gap is where his whole breakdown starts. Bet David runs everything through numbers, not headlines. He doesn't care about outfits, magazine covers, or how many followers somebody's got. He cares about revenue, attendance, and ratings, because those are the numbers that decide who actually gets paid and why. And that's exactly the backdrop he pulled up when Reese brought up striking, because the WNBA wasn't always in a position to survive a work stoppage. Not long ago, the league lost close to $40 million a year and needed the NBA to cover the gap just to keep the lights on. Then, the WNBA signed an 11-year media deal worth $2.2 billion, averaging $200 million a year, a number that would have sounded made up before Caitlyn Clark's rookie season. Bet David credits her directly for that jump, pointing to a 48% spike in attendance across the league, 2.3 million total fans through the turnstiles, and a 170% jump in TV ratings on ESPN. That's not a vibe, that's a receipt. So when Reese says she's the WNBA it girl, Bet David called it a bluff with no cards behind it. Sponsors and league executives don't care about runway appearances, he said. They care about how many people tune in and how many seats fill up. And none of Reese's brand activity showed up in either number. Then he turned to the All-Star Weekend tape itself, and he didn't hold back. "I love watching her highlights of missing shots," he said, calling her the worst shooter he's ever seen at that level. He brought up her numbers too. His point wasn't cruelty for its own sake. It's that the tape does the arguing for him, and no amount of branding covers for box scores like that. Then Shaq weighed in, and this one had to sting differently, because Shaq runs Reebok's basketball division and backed Reese from the start. He came out and said flatly that Reese is no legend, which directly contradicts her own Michael Jordan comparison. That's her own shoe company's president publicly questioning her game, and he didn't stop there either. He turned around and said Sophie Cunningham should have had that All-Star spot instead, praising how she plays and how she carries herself next to Clark. Bet David's whole argument comes back to one line: the market doesn't pay for confidence, it pays for results. Clark didn't threaten to sit out, didn't call a press conference, didn't need a hashtag. She averaged 19.2 points, 8.4 assists, and 5.7 rebounds a game as a rookie. She's gotten even better now, moved the ratings, and let the new CBA sort out everybody's raise from there, Reese included. And that's the part that stings the most. The players who complained about her spotlight are now cashing checks that spotlight created. The WNBA's next breakout star isn't chasing headlines, she's chasing wins. And that's the whole difference between Sophie Cunningham and Angel Reese in one sentence. Reese built her name off Instagram posts, fashion stunts, and a Reebok deal that sounded huge on paper. Cunningham built hers off standing for something she actually believes and playing tough defense next to the best player in the league every single night. One of those approaches survives a bad shooting week. The other one doesn't. Cunningham isn't just a bench piece anymore, she's turned into one of the most marketable names in the whole league, and it didn't happen through a marketing plan. It happened through diving on loose balls, taking charges, boxing out players bigger than her, and doing every job on the floor that doesn't show up on a stat sheet but wins basketball games anyway. Her chemistry with Indiana's starters didn't happen overnight either. It's built game by game, rep by rep, alongside the exact players who need her the most. Picture the pieces fitting together. Clark runs the offense and finds shooters nobody else sees. Boston controls the paint on both ends. Mitchell scores in bunches whenever the offense stalls out. Cunningham fills the gap. Those three can't fill alone. The physical defense, the floor burns, the possessions where somebody's got to get a hand on the ball and take the contact. That's a roster with actual depth now, not just one superstar carrying 4 role players who disappear in April. Lexi Hull fits that same mold, and she doesn't get enough credit for it. She's the kind of role player who doesn't fill up a highlight reel but makes a team miserable to play against, especially once May turns into June and June turns into a playoff series where every possession matters. Teams with 1 star and no identity get bounced early. Teams with a star and 4 or 5 players like Hull and Cunningham grind out the series that go to 7 games. That shift in identity is exactly why sponsors and media outlets started pointing their cameras somewhere new. It's not about who posts the most, it's about who shows up when the game's on the line and who the league can build a story around that doesn't fall apart under a close look. Cunningham's profile is climbing for the same reason Reese's is sliding, because attention follows results once the numbers get big enough for people to actually check them. Look at the sneaker data again, except flip who it's pointing at. Nobody reached for Reese's Reebok shoe during All-Star weekend, not one player. But players wanted Clark's CC ones, and Cunningham's right there next to her every night, catching that same wave of attention just by being part of the same core. Obama walked past Reese to talk to Clark, and Shaq, the same guy running Reese's own shoe deal, said flat out that Cunningham should have had that All-Star spot instead of Reese. That's not one voice. That's 2 of the biggest names in sports and politics pointing the same direction, away from Reese toward Cunningham and Clark. None of this happened by accident, and it's not a PR campaign either. It's Cunningham showing up every night and doing the job. And the Fever aren't just building a roster around that. They're building the league's new center of gravity. The team every front office has to plan around instead of the team getting talked about on a group chat. If this keeps trending the way it's trending right now, 2026 isn't just another season. It's the year the rest of the league has to catch up to what Indiana already built. Picture the Fever rolling into the playoffs with Clark, Boston, Mitchell, Hull, and Cunningham, and every other roster in the league drawing up a special game plan just for them. Clark's push for MVP and a Fever championship run isn't hype anymore. It's sitting on the same numbers Bet David keeps pointing back to. Attendance climbing, ratings climbing, shoe deals actually selling out. The new CBA pays players off that exact impact, and Clark's group built the impact first. The league already picked its winner, not through headlines, but through box scores and ticket sales. 2026 is when everyone else catches up. Are you Team Sophie or Team Reese? Let me know down in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications as we're bringing you all the action and top stories. Click the video on the screen, and we'll see you in the next one.